This is 80s Mint with Daz. And if you're
welcome to the 12-Man Podcast. Strap in for an hour of Boro chat. Up the Boro!
Nice little intro, isn't it?
Love it.
I know, me too. Right, good evening. Welcome to the 12-Man Podcast. There's only two of us in at the moment. You got me, Steve Jackson, in the main chair. Maybe Saturday was maybe too bad for some people. And back from his break, his jollies, was it COVID last week?
Was it what?
Was it COVID last week?
No, it's just I was tired.
Rough as dog. I've got my wingman. Got Mr. John Cutler back with me. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good.
Good holiday.
Yeah, it was lovely. Yeah. Plenty to discuss tonight. Like, I'm sure it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Don't worry. And live from the Gibson Out Brigade, I've got Steve Dixon. Evening, Dicko.
Evening. That's a little bit naughty, Stephen. A little bit naughty. Nobody's Gibson Out Brigade here.
I'll give that.
Not yet.
There you go. Caught you. Right. Are we doing all right?
Yeah. Good. All good. Looking forward to tomorrow night. Should be good.
Yeah.
Big game.
It's a massive game. Massive.
Really is.
Yeah. It's going to be a big game. I'll discuss that a bit later. I can't believe I'm going to discuss Saturday's game first, but yeah, we'll go.
We'll have to.
We have to discuss some of it. I've got plenty of opinions on it. Might need to swear jar for this, but hey ho, here we go. Right, so yeah, we're going to talk Blackburn. When did it go wrong? What time before 3 o'clock did it go wrong? Probably 2 o'clock. Was it the team? Was it the manager? Where did we go wrong Saturday? We have to. This has to stop now. So we'll chew the fat. We'll get through it. And we'll discuss this week's games as well. 2 big games coming up. Sheffield Wednesday away at Hillsborough. Second bottom v bottom. And Southampton at home. So, yeah, before we start, are we both all right?
Yeah, good, yeah.
All good, yeah?
Yeah.
Good. Good. I say we are live, uninterrupted. Get your views in. This could get tasty. Right, cut, 2 o'clock. Team comes round. It raised my eyebrows. What did you do with yours?
I say it every week. I don't know how McGree's not getting in this team. I have no idea. People going on about him travelling round with Australia. Yep, fair enough. What about the weeks before that? I don't know why. There must be something. There's a reason why, whether he's carrying some kind of injury or there's been a fallout on a training pitch, or I can't see any reason on standards and ability how he's not in that starting 11. I just can't see it.
It's starting to become a bit of a puzzle. I'm going to say puzzle because I think that's probably the best word for it now, because we don't know what goes on, obviously. We're not there 7 days a week, whatever it is they're going. But something's not right, is it?
He's a creative midfielder. He's different to the other midfielders we've got. He's creative. Does he lose the ball sometimes when he's trying to do a pass through to the forwards? Yes, he does. But I'll accept that if he's trying to create something. His work rate's superb. Every time he's on the pitch, I think he's given his all, which is all I ask as a fan. And some of them players in the last few weeks, and going back to last season, the same players again under Wilder, when, in my opinion, the down tools are doing exactly the same. I don't think they're down in tools, but they're certainly not performing to the standards that we know they can perform at. And that's what I can't take.
I mean, I'll delve into that a bit further, obviously, when we've gone through the game. But, Diggo, what was your thoughts on the game, on the starting lineup? Sorry.
Wasn't the worst lineup in the world, but obviously the standout point was what John's been talking about, Riley McGree not playing. he's Middlesbrough's best player. He's got to start under the circumstances. You might be a little bit jaded off the flight, but for me, your best player has to play. We're desperate for some points on the board, and you need your talisman in the team. Matt Crooks was a bit of a strange one for me, playing up front. We've got different options up front with, the options of maybe trying Marcus Force alongside Latte Lath, or if he wants a big man with a presence, you've got big Josh Coburn there, who's a natural centre forward, who for me is a better fit than Matt Crooks as a centre forward. I like Matt Crooks, don't get us wrong, he's a good player, but I don't think he's a centre forward. So they were the two big standouts, one omission and one starting in the starting 11 on Saturday. That was a little bit strange for me.
Yeah, it was strange for me. I didn't disagree with 3/4 of the team. I thought 3/4 of the team picks itself, kind of thing. But
yeah. Should Jones have been starting?
Yes. Oh God, yes.
I agree. I think when he's come off the bench, he's looked quite lively this season.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
it's not just that. It's the fact that you've got to trust the manager with the starting 11, and we don't know what's going on behind the scenes in terms of fitness or people being jaded, like one about McGree, whether he's tired coming back from Australia. However, as the game progresses, surely Riley McGree gets on the pitch earlier than what he did to make an impact when we're getting beat, but he doesn't come on until later on. Isaiah Jones, for example, doesn't get on the pitch. Now, if you're talking about Australians being jaded, Sammy Silvera got on the pitch ahead of Isaiah Jones, who hasn't been away. So there's some strange thinking in the personnel and the tactics at the moment with Michael Carrick. I think it boils down to the fact that I don't think Michael Carrick at this moment in time knows his best side.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. That's not the best thing to say, is it? 6 games into a league campaign now, you've got to have some sort of idea. But while I'm thinking ahead, I'll introduce our guest for the evening. He's just popped on. The Gazette's Craig Johns. Evening, Craig.
Evening, lads. Sorry I'm a bit late on press conference day, but hope everyone's well.
Don't worry about
Craig.
that. Are you well?
Yes, I'm very well, thanks, mate. Are you?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. Just about got over Saturday, so yeah, it's good.
Yeah, welcome to the pod, Craig. We'll start you off with a nice, easy question. What's happening with Riley McGree?
Yeah, I must admit it's a strange one to me as well. I think Saturday was, as kind of Stephen alluded to there as I was coming on, it was an easy one for Carrick to, almost get out of it if he needed to, because obviously there was that travelling for him in the international break, would have arrived back late. But certainly, prior to the international break, I'm not sure why he hasn't been starting more. For me, he's an obvious fit in that left-sided forward role. And as I say, on Saturday, I understand why he didn't. Him and Silvera, the two Australian lads, 3 Glover, they had travelled from the USA where they'd been with Australia, so wouldn't have had much training time. I can understand that, but to play Lewis O'Brien in that role just felt like a really, really strange decision to me, and particularly when you had natural forwards on the bench. But yeah, as for Riley McGree, I'm not sure why he's not starting more at the moment, but certainly hope we do see him start more going forward.
Yeah, definitely. It's yeah, I mean, we've had people come on here and say that Chuba Akpom was our best player last season. Fair enough, he scored 29 goals, but he wasn't. Riley McGree was our best player last season. He was absolutely unbelievable. I mean, some of the performances he put in were absolutely sensational. Like, well, even Championship quality last season, it was Premier League quality. I couldn't believe he was one of ours, kind of the thing. He was up there with the likes of Archer and Ramsey, if you really want to talk about them. He was that good for me, and yeah, for him to miss out, I don't get it. I don't get it. But Craig, I'll start with you then. I'll delve into the game if I really have to. First goal. Where do you? I mean, I was behind the goal, obviously, and I had a pretty decent angle of the goal because the ball was pretty much heading towards me. Was it the defence backing off? Was it the midfield not closing the gap, or was it a mix of both?
Yeah, I think a mix of both. I think Carrick's alluded to that idea in the press conference in terms of the fact that at the moment, Middlesbrough aren't defending well enough as a team. I think it's easy to, pinpoint individuals. Obviously, Deal Fry was done with the dummy, but in Deal Fry's defence, it was Gallagher who was his man. He'd followed the man. The dummy was applied, and Smodic just happened to be behind him to profit from it. And you have to question, who was Martin Smodic, who should have been Martin Smodic. I think, first and second goal for me just highlighted, I think Middlesbrough had those problems last season, even when it was going well, in terms of this is a very expansive style of play. It's a very attacking style of play. It relies on Middlesbrough, throwing a lot of bodies into attack. And I think last season they got away with that 9 times out of 10. While we could still see those defensive frailties, I think they got away with it a lot of the time because of the attacking quality they had in the team. I think they kept possession, particularly in the final third, a lot better than they have been this season, which, to go back to the previous Riley McGree point, is, I think, somewhere where, they really would profit from having him in the team more, because I think he is good at holding the ball. He is good at, keeping possession, and he is good at being that link between midfield and attack, which Tuba was as well. I think Tuba's a big miss in that number 10 role, because the ball is coming back at Middlesbrough far too often. It's not staying in that final third of the pitch often enough, and because they do throw so many bodies into attack, I think what we're seeing at the moment in both of those goals on Saturday, I think Middlesbrough are just throwing too much to attack, and then it's far too simple for teams to then hit them on the counter quickly, and they've got so much space to exploit and hit Middlesbrough.
Yeah, I mean, Coach, do you disagree with anything Craig said there?
I don't particularly like picking out individual players, but I mentioned him last year, and this season again, I think he's been very poor, yet he seems to start every single week. For their first goal on Saturday, I know what you're saying about him going out and following his man. You can't just, it was like he was going for a walk in the park. Dale Fry going out, walking away from the back line and leaving a massive gap. That's kids' football. You can't do that. We're not going to stop conceding goals until they start defending as a unit and keeping a proper line. Like Craig said, we conceded a lot of goals last year, but the difference last year was we were scoring a lot of goals. So I said before the deadline, I thought we should have brought in a centre half. And for me, I would drop Fry. It might be controversial. A lot of fans seem to really like him. I'd drop him.
I mean, that's fair enough. I mean, Matty Moran's come on Facebook there and said that Fry was covering for Lenihan on Saturday. I looked straight at your face when you saw that. For me,
Lenihan's twice the defender Fry is. He'll put his body on the line. We saw it a couple of weeks ago when Fry turned his back for one of the goals. I can't remember which game it was now. And we came on here and criticised him for it. 200 odd games for this football club he's played. He's not a kid anymore. He's big enough to take criticism, and if he needs criticising, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I'm gonna sit here and criticise him.
West Brom, wasn't
it? It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was West Brom.
You learn that at school. You don't turn your back.
Yeah, he's done it a couple of times this season for me. He turned his back. You don't turn your back.
How many times did I criticise him last season under Wilder, when he had a bit of a fallout with Wilder, and then for weeks and weeks and weeks he was absolutely pants until Wilder eventually got the sack. I'm sick of player power. How can you manage someone who's on more money than you?
Spot on.
That's not just him. That's the whole squad. Managers have it's a hard task these days. A lot harder than it ever has been.
Dicko, I'll hand over to you. Anything you could take and say, no, you're talking complete balls on that, or do you agree with everything the coach has just said there?
Yes, I agree with a lot of it, but I've got to be honest, I'm not going to, just say it for the sake of it. I do think Dale Fry is a good championship defender. I think you're getting a lot of squads, and he has been really poor this season. I totally admit he's been poor this season, and the problem we've got with there's a gap between the midfield and the defence. It's quite apparent, and it puts the defenders, I think, in a position where quite frequently there's players running at them, and it's, do you stand off and jockey them, or do you go and close the ball? So it always makes them look possibly worse than what they are. But I think Dale Fry and Darrell Lenihan would probably get in a lot of the championship teams. But I think we've got a problem, in my opinion, with Johnny Howson. He's not getting any younger, and he's great on the ball, but he needs legs around him. And I thought 2 years ago, Johnny Howson was finished. And then we got players in around him like Chuba Akpom and Ramsey and McGree. And suddenly, because he had the legs around him, those players could sort of compensate for his lack of legs. But those players, aren't playing now. McGree should be playing, but he's not. Ramsey's gone. Chuba's gone. We haven't got the pace buzzing around him, I think, and he's getting exposed a little bit. Hayden Hackney, as good as he is a good young player, he's not really a defensive midfield player. He likes to get on the ball. He likes to drive forward with the ball, but he's not really a defensive-minded midfielder. And I think when Middlesbrough breaking, like we do with clusters of 4 and 5 players on the attack, when we lose possession, teams break them very quickly, and they know Hackney isn't naturally a defensive midfielder. Howson's legs, for me, aren't there now, and they can get in behind in that gap. We've got that little gap which we've seen exposed at West Brom. We've seen it exposed on Saturday, where teams can get in that hole between the midfield and the defence and drive at our back four. And I know there's been some poor goals where we want the defenders to come out and put the body in the line, and they haven't done so. I totally agree. But this has been a failing in Middlesbrough for quite a while now. And because we haven't got the talent this season as last season, it's getting even more exposed. I mean, I got given a stat today that Middlesbrough have conceded 34 goals in 19 away games under Michael Carrick. Now, that's, a lot of goals to concede in 19 away games, 34. So it shows that Middlesbrough defensively aren't good enough, really, to be a top 6 team defensively. I think we got away with it last season because we had the best attack in the division, which papered over a lot of the cracks. But this season, we haven't got those players, and those cracks are still there, and teams know it, and teams are exploiting it, whether it be the full-back positions, whether it be the midfield. We need somehow to come up with a plan to counteract this failing within Middlesbrough's system. And I watched Craig's press conference today, which was really good. And I was quite pleased to see Michael Carrick a little bit more, I don't know, sort of talking a bit more like, not just the managerial jargon and throwing managerial puns around. And because his press conferences can be quite dull usually. I wish he would liven up a little bit. But he did today a little bit, whether that's because he's under pressure or what, I don't know. But he seemed to be a bit more lively today and a bit more wanting to make his point on things and get his point over, mentioning the supporters and the team and the coaching staff all being together. It was almost like a little bit of a rallying call, if you could call that, for Michael Carrick. But the worrying thing he did say was, we won't change the way we will play. So we're either going to improve and get better moving forward the way Michael Carrick wants to do it, or he's going to die on his sword. So that's my worry moving forward now. Tactically, we're very naive. Defensively, we're poor. He did mention tweaks today. I'm sure Craig will come back and see. He did mention little tweaks to the system and tweaks to to the players individually. But if we're not going to change formation, I don't know how we're going to overcome that glaring sort of chasm within the midfield and the consistency of conceding goals.
I mean, I've sat on the fence with this formation chat a bit, and I wouldn't be against a formation change, but I'd massively highlight that it doesn't matter what formation you play, especially on Saturday, it wouldn't have stopped both them goals because they both came from the centre. And if your centre-backs are going to back off the way they did, it doesn't matter if you've got 2 of them or 3 of them. If they're going to keep backing up, because there's a amount of space, especially for the second goal that Sammy Smolix had, was quite frankly a joke. He picked the ball up from the ball coming from the right-hand side and basically had time to basically take a touch, look up and ping it. And he did ping it because Dieng had no chance. I mean, I'm just going through Craig's ratings for Saturday, and Dieng is, I'm pretty much the. But if you correct me if I'm wrong here, Craig, you have him as the only 7 out of 10 out of the team.
I think so, off the top of my head. Yeah, to be honest, I was debating going for 8 for Dieng. I don't think that would have been unfair. I think he ultimately kept Boro in the game, or given them a chance to get something which they ultimately didn't. I just thought there was a couple of erratic moments within that as well, which ultimately meant I only give him a 7. But yeah, he felt to me about the only one who could come out with any real credit from the game.
Yeah, he's some of the saves he did make were absolutely, they were superb. I mean, the one-on-one saves he was making in the second half when we were taking a bit more of a risk, he stood up strong, and he was a very potent keeper. He was very, physical. He didn't shy away from the challenge. He just stood himself up and saved the ball. It was a great save both times, and you all right? And but I mean,
the game should have been out of sight if it wasn't for Dieng, let's be honest.
Oh yeah,
Blackburn should have been 3-4 up at half time. They didn't take the chances. They missed a glorious opportunity right at the start of the second half, and then they scored at the start of the second half. That's another statistic, which I don't know if you guys know. You know what I'm like with my stats, and I look at stuff. I looked back end of last season, beginning of this season. I sit every week with my dad at the Riverside watching the games, and we'll start off the second half so poorly every week. And I think, what do they say to them at half time? Because every time we come out, we're dreadful. That's both home and away. And I had a look in, just including league games, the back end of last season and this season. In the last 14 league games, Middlesbrough have conceded in the second half 8 times between 45 and 49 minutes. 8 times in the last 14 games. Last season, we've done it against Rotherham, Luton, Bristol, Huddersfield. This season, Huddersfield, West Brom, QPR, in Blackburn on Saturday. Between 45 and 49, 8 and 14 games. I mean, that can't just be unlucky. There's got to be something again in the system where we'll come out the second half and there's something up here not right. That's another thing that can't be allowed to continue. We should be coming out the second half, because normally we're getting beat anyway, and be on the front foot and trying to get back in the game. But instead, like on Saturday, we're nearly conceding as soon as the kick off. I'm flabbergasted with what's going on, to be honest with you. It's basics. If you're a Middlesbrough manager now, you should be saying, as soon as start the second half, we're on the front foot, we're staying strong. But every time, we're nearly conceding as soon as they kick off the second half, and we are conceding.
See, I agree.
Basics.
I agree with what you're saying there, Steve. But does the manager need to tell players to be focused? We've got players there that have played 200 games in this division and played Premier League games. Premier League, there's loads of experience on that pitch. They shouldn't need telling to be focused the first 5 minutes in an away game.
I agree. But sadly, they must do, because they're not doing it week in, week out. It's the same mistakes, and that's what's bitterly disappointing this season. I'm sure we'll all agree. It's the same mistakes, the same failings. Players driving through a midfield, shooting from outside the box and scoring goals, having too much time. It's conceding at the start of the second half. It's the same failings. We're not actually giving that we did on Saturday, but overall we're not giving that many chances away. But when we do give chances away, we're getting punished to the maximum, because we're defending so poor. It's so schoolboy, and at the end of the pitch, we're not putting the ball in the back of the net. We're creating chances still. Like I've said for many weeks on here now, if you take away the quality you've taken away and replace it with, potential and chances, and you've lost 60, 70 million pounds worth of talent, replace it with 7 or 8 million pounds worth of talent, you've got to expect that. And that's where we're at the moment. But it's up to Michael Carrick and his coaching staff to very, very quickly start to address these basic mistakes within our game. And you've got an ex-Real Madrid and England centre-half in Jonathan Woodgate, who managed the club, and we couldn't defend when he managed the club. And he's come back as number 2, and we still can't defend. It's like, I don't understand what's going on. We should be superb defensively. We had one of the best central defensive midfielders in the game in Michael Carrick, and one of the best central defenders in Europe in Jonathan Woodgate, and we can't defend. Or is that just me?
No, you're right. You just mentioned twice there, Woodgate came back as manager, can't defend. Now assistant, can't defend. Is anybody putting 2 and 2 together?
I don't want to be harsh. I don't want to be harsh saying that Woodgate, because listen, when he come back last season under Carrick, nobody was questioning him then. We're still conceding then, by the way, but because we're winning games, everybody was saying, Woodgate's keeping yourself in the background, out the limelight. Michael Carrick was speaking highly about him. The club are winning games. And, as a fan, you just think, right, yeah, fair play, good luck to the guy. But now, when we're sitting bottom of the championship, the same way as we were when he was manager, these things need to be addressed and need to be pointed out. I said last week, we need some experience in that dugout. Michael Carrick's been thrown under a bus. He was expected to have experience alongside him when he joined the club. He was going to get the ex-Fulham manager, Rennie Mullenstein. He went on to Pasteurs New in national football, didn't come, but we didn't go on and find somebody else to come in. And then this season, it's the same. We've just went with the same old. Michael Carrick, I'm sure behind the scenes he's disappointed with how it's went this summer in terms of recruitment and the help he's getting. He's a young, inexperienced manager who he broke every record almost in Middlesbrough's history last season, and he's reversing it now. He's going to break every record for the wrong reasons this season. If we don't find a way of getting these players to fit into a system and start getting points on the board, because ultimately, regardless if we're talking about Woodgate or we're talking about the players or what we've spent or Kieran Scott or whoever you want to point the finger at, Michael Carrick will be the one who carries the can. And I do feel sorry for him.
I feel massively sorry for him.
I mean, I know we're still talking about the Blackburn game, but you're saying that there about carrying the can, right? Years ago, managers used to get time at this football club. Now, last season, I didn't want Wilder gone. I think it was player power to go, Wilder gone. So if we lose tomorrow and we lose at home to Southampton on Saturday, would anyone be surprised if Carrick got the bullet?
Yeah.
You'd be surprised with our recent managerial history.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Dicko?
Yeah, I would. I think it's far too early for anything like that. I'd be surprised. I'd be disappointed and surprised, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't get me wrong. I do not want it to happen. But I think alarm bells will already be ringing. And if we lose tomorrow and Saturday, I know Southampton have conceded a bucket load in the last 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to continue, is it? Southampton have got the quality, and if they're conceding bucket loads at the minute, that's not going to continue. If you look at Middlesbrough's games coming up, the tricky games, fixtures, Chef Wed, bottom of the table clash. It's a game that Middlesbrough really need to be taking 3 points. You've got Southampton coming up, who are relegated side. It'll be a difficult game. You've got Cardiff coming up, who have picked up a little bit. You've got Watford away. It was a really tough game away to Watford. And you've got the local derby coming up against Sunderland at the Stadium of Light. It's really tricky fixtures, and we need somehow to galvanise ourselves and get some points. Whether that's winning tomorrow night, getting something against Southampton, regaining a bit of confidence, beating the Mackhams in the derby game. We need to restore a little bit of faith, a little bit of pride. In one way, they're good fixtures to have, because I don't think Middlesbrough fans will be expecting too many points from them. But in looking the other way, if it goes horribly wrong, and we'll come away with another 2 or 3 points from the next 5 games, I do think Michael Carrick will be under big pressure.
What about you, Craig? It'd be interesting to get your views. We have changed a lot of managers around this time of year in the past few years, which previously Steve hadn't done. A few more defeats. Do you see there's any way that, in my opinion, it would be a panic sagging? Do you think there's any way that could happen?
Certainly, everything I'm hearing right now is that they want to move away from that. I think there's an appreciation that, as you rightly say, that they've done that once too often now. And I think when I used to cover Sunderland, that happened at Sunderland a lot when they were still in the Premier League. And for a good 3 or 4 seasons, they had a policy of go through a season with a manager. It would get to February, March, they'd sack the manager because they were in threat of relegation and bring someone new in. They'd just about keep them up, stay on. And it would be a constant cycle for about 3 or 4 years of doing that, until eventually they got David Moyes and it caught up to them and they went down. and you know, they didn't just go down, but they went on a really, really downward trajectory all the way to League One, and you know, ultimately suffered in League One for quite a few years. And I think, you know, that's a good example of where what happened there was, and it has been happening at Boro, is when you change a manager, you don't just change a manager. There then needs to be a lot of overhaul from the back of that. You know, that new manager comes in and is ultimately working with a group of players that isn't their group of players and isn't necessarily suited to the way they want to play. Not only is it a group of players from the previous manager, but in a lot of cases when it's so, you know, so soon, so quickly, it's a group of players that might have been for that manager, but then a couple of players who might have been from the manager before him. And you end up with such an imbalanced group. I appreciate that the way Boro try to do things now with Kieran Scott as head of football and the recruitment team, you know, lends itself more to kind of recruiting for the football club rather than the manager. But I think ultimately there's an appreciation that, particularly after the last two managers who didn't really buy in to what Middlesbrough are trying to do now, there's an appreciation that in Michael Carrick, they have got somebody who does buy in, who does believe in what they want to do, and is, you know, there is this togetherness that Carrick spoke about at today's press conference. And, you know, certainly from everything I was told during the international break, is that, you know, there is a lot of kind of belief and a lot of, you know, optimism moving forward, despite that I appreciate being hard to kind of see at the moment. It's hard to take much optimism and hope from what we are seeing right now. But yeah, I think there's context behind, you know, why they feel it's not going as well as it is right now with regards to the summer transfer window and the, you know, the young players that they had to bring in. That's by no means something that you know, Carrick wants to use as an excuse. He was clear on that today, wasn't he? That just because they've signed a lot of young players, and you know, that doesn't mean that he is happy for results to be going as they are right now, and you know, he's happy to be patient or anything like that. He wants results as much as any supporter. But I think, you know, internally there's definitely that feeling of, we need to stick this out. This will turn. We can't be going on this kind of sack higher cycle that we have been in recent years.
Yeah.
Did you think the same as me today, Craig, watching you at the press conference? I just watched the highlights. That he was more animated than usual. He had the more determined look in his eye. He was more willing. Like, he's wanting to get his point across. Like you said about, it'll turn. This squad's good enough. You know, we will get results. We've got quality play. He seemed to want to get his point across, and he kept mentioning that we're all in it together. The supporters, it's a time for the supporters to, you know, to really sort of, you know, keep the support coming. The numbers that we're getting away from home and at home shows how great the support is, and they've got to do the same on the training pitch. You seem to be like a little bit of a rallying cry for Michael Carrick standards, by the way, but he just seemed a little bit different personality-wise today at the press conference than the usual snooze fest, shall I say?
Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from, and I think, you know, it's you know, blatantly obvious that Michael Carrick would rather not do press. That's not something that he enjoys, and but yeah, I think what we particularly found is often it's, you know, when times are tough, or if you ask him about a player who's going through a tougher time, that's when you tend to get the best stuff out of Michael Carrick, when he gets a bit defensive. I think it would. Zach Steffen, I think I was trying to think off the top of my head who it was, but last season when Zach Steffen went through a bit more of a difficult period, and there was some questioning after a couple of mistakes, it was probably one of the best answers we've ever got from a question out of Michael Carrick when asking him about Zach Steffen and about the pressure he was under. I often find that is when Carrick is at his most animated and kind of most interesting, is when, you know, perhaps defensive maybe isn't the right word, but I hope you get what I'm trying to say in terms of, you know, you know, back against the wall type of thing. But yeah, I did also, to go back to your point that you made when you were discussing that, on, you know, the fact that he kind of inferred that he wouldn't be changing the tactics, certainly not any big changes as well. And, you know, I'm very much on your side with that as well. I agree with you completely that I feel like, looking at that at the moment, the lack of attacking quality in comparison to last season means that Middlesbrough probably do need to look at shoring things up a bit more. I think he almost hinted at that on Saturday as well when I asked him about Lewis O'Brien and why he picked him in that role, because he mentioned that he did that to try and steal things up. But to me, what he did there was almost ask O'Brien to play two roles, because he was asking him to essentially be a central midfielder when out of possession, but in possession still be a left winger. And I think, going back to me ratings, I give O'Brien a 5, but
didn't work, did it? Didn't work at all.
In some respects, it was harsh on O'Brien to rate him as the 5, because I thought it was more, as you say, the role not working for him rather than anything he did, personally, because I actually thought he did work as hard as he possibly could in the position, but clearly he's not a left winger.
No.
And Boro were just left lacking that extra attacking man because of that. So it's interesting that he seems to acknowledge in that Boro do need to steal up the midfield a bit, because I do think Stephen mentioned earlier the second goal, and I appreciate the not coming out and closing him down. But I think if you roll that player back a little bit further, Schmoditz actually starts that attack from about the halfway line, and he sprays it out wide and continues his run to the edge of the box, completely unmarked. And you've got to be questioning there, where is the midfield and why is he allowed to just so easily and so passively walk through Middlesbrough's midfield to get into a position that he did ultimately get into on the edge of the box to make it 2-0. So, that kind of talk of, this is what we believe in, this is what I believe in, this is how we're going to play it. I think in some ways respectable that he has belief in it, and hopefully it does turn. But like all of you guys sound like you want it to work for him. Of course you do. You don't want him to ultimately go wrong and for him to end up leaving. I do hope that his downfall doesn't end up being that he does die on his sword of a tactic or a formation that ultimately just doesn't work for this group of players, because I think there is a fine line between confidence and belief and stubbornness.
Yeah.
It comes across a little bit naive, doesn't it? That's the problem with it. A little bit naive. And when you think about it this season, including the next game against Sheffield Wednesday, when we go 7 games in, we actually haven't played anybody yet. We've had quite a gentle start this season, I think. We haven't really played anybody yet. I think we've got some big games to come up against the teams that have come down, local derby games. We need to pick up some results and quickly. Otherwise, he will die on his sword. Yeah,
you're right. He needs to pick up and quick. And with regards to the second goal, I'll take your word for that. I was literally walking back up the stairs when it got pinged back to Smodics. It hit in the top corner, and I walked back down the stairs. I'm not going to lie to you. I went straight back down. I'm not watching that. And I watched the last 20 minutes after Crooks scored the goal. So, but last question before I ask these man of the matches, Craig. Obviously, you were there Saturday. How much were you waiting for that away end to absolutely pop when Latte-Laff got that touch and in on goal 90-odd minutes in?
Oh, dear, it was almost carbon copy of it. Was it Huddersfield where he did it as well then? And obviously I've missed a lot of the early games for being on paternity leave. But dear me, I was saying this at the press conference, and he reminds me a lot of David Bellion when he came through at Sunderland, and Sunderland somehow managed to sell him for quite a good fee to Manchester United in a summer. I remember that Alex Ferguson seemed to go a bit mental, and I think it was the same summer he signed Cleberson and Eric Jemba. So it wasn't one of Alex Ferguson's finest summers. But Bellion, I always remember, was French kid, and he had bags of pace. Give him the ball and he had bags of pace. A bit like Traore at Boro, but obviously Traore, certainly under Pulis, found an end product. But Bellion, they'd either play him as a striker or a winger, and give him the ball, he'd knock it and run and beat anybody for pace. But when he actually got into a position where he either needed to take a shot or take a cross, he couldn't do either. So he was wasted, really. That pace was pointless. How he ended up at Manchester United, I'll never know. But yeah, I mean, I'm certain that it will click for Latte-Laff. I'm certain. I hope it will. I know it's Switzerland. We can talk about that kind of the level of that league, but he managed 16 goals. I don't care what league it's in, at a professional standard. If you score 16 goals in a European top tier, you know where the goal is, no matter, you know, what division it is, whether it's Switzerland, England, Italy, whatever. If you're scoring 16 goals, you have got some finishing ability. So, you know, I think hopefully it will just click for him at the minute. Is he just taking that extra touch, or that you know, important touch? Is it just going too heavy because he's thinking about it a little bit too much? Possibly. I think, you know, it's such a difficult position playing up front, isn't it? And I think, you know, when you are possibly thinking about things too much, you know, whether that be a lack of confidence or just too eager to impress, often that can be when it doesn't go right. And, you know, when you're just in a rhythm, when you're in a flow, you've got that confidence, you know, perhaps that touch isn't as heavy, or you don't take that touch at all. You just instinctively stick it in the back of the net. So I maintain hope that, you know, that when it does happen for Latif, he can be a very exciting player, because certainly a lot of his game, you know, the way he runs at defenders and the pace he has, he's certainly a live wire, and he has the potential to be a very exciting player to watch.
Yeah. No, he's there's something there. He just needs to unlock it a bit. But yeah, I mean, I was bang on line with him when he was running in. And he just needed to do a little flick with his left foot and just ping it as hard as he could in the top corner either side, and the keeper won't get anywhere near it. Ainsley Perez was not going to get anywhere near it. And I would have gone from row 10 to on the netting on the front. I'm absolutely certain of it. I knew what was going to happen, but the touch was... trampoline would be hard, like harsh on him, but it was so bad, so bad. But right, I'll start with you, Coach Man. The match was Saturday.
Dieng.
Easy. Do you go?
Goalkeeper's Union, Dieng. Easy choice for me, that.
Yeah, I'm going Dieng as well. Full house, because I know Craig went Dieng as well. So yeah, there wasn't much else, was there? You know what I mean? It was just such a disappointing...
I thought Fry was a bit better. I did think, I know John's against Fry at the moment, he has been poor this season, but I did think Dale Fry was a lot better than he has been on Saturday, and did some good things within the game. And I would say an honourable mention for Bangura. Now, I know he didn't cover himself in glory defensively, but I think he showed glimpses of what he might offer going forward. He seemed to look a little bit more of a threat moving forward than the early stages we've seen of Engel, for example. I thought Bangura offered a little bit forward going forward, so that could be encouraging. I know he's probably not going to play tomorrow. Engel's going to probably come back in because he's injured, but I thought moving forward was a few encouraging signs from Bangura going forward with the ball.
He's down to go for the wing backs, isn't he? It's just... but
it's crying out for it for me that we've got the personnel to do so, and I know it's pointless to mention it anymore now, because after listening to today's press conference, it's clear and obvious that Michael Carrick is not going to change his ways, and that's fine, that's his prerogative. But all I've said is, with Isaiah Jones and Bangura and the centre-backs we've got, and the midfield players we've got the tools to do a decent side, playing the three at the back with wing backs. We have got the squad to do so, but it's pointless mentioning it. Michael Carrick's made it clear today that's not going to happen, so we've just got to back the boss and hope he gets it right.
What's interesting, you should mention about the three at the back. So I've written my team out what I'd start tomorrow. Be interesting to hear what you think about it. So Dieng, then a back three of McNair, Lenihan and Vandenberg. Jones right wing back, McGree left wing back, O'Brien, House and Hackney, then either Force or Greenwood, and Lath up front.
Well, you're not going to get any complaints off me, because you mustn't have listened to last week's podcast, because that's the team I named. So yeah. That's what team I would like to see play. So we'll bang on, me and you, mate. That's
like
the
say,
team I would like to see play.
The only decision tomorrow for me is whether you play Greenwood or Force. Just play Greenwood just off Lath.
Yeah, I'd like to see Greenwood giving a goal tomorrow. I think there's something about him. There's something there.
The one good thing about that is, with you agreeing with me, it means that you'd agree that Fry gets dropped tomorrow. So happy days.
I did say that last week, but I did think he was better on Saturday.
Well, agree to disagree.
What about you? Was any changes you made from that team? Or was it pretty much what you go with?
Yeah, it's pretty much what I'd go with. I don't know if he's going to go wing backs.
No, he's not. He won't.
He's not going to do it. So
No.
As I say, to me, it's a strange one, because as I said, we've got the squad and the personnel to to switch a couple of formations, and that one just screams out at you because you get more of your key players in the starting 11 doing it that way. You get Isaiah Jones back in the team, you get McGree back in the team, you get Force up front. It seems to get people in the natural positions, but he ain't going to do it, and I think that's part of the problem. The way he wants to play, there's always going to be 2 or 3 players every week where the supporters are going to go, why is he not playing? Because he's got a lot of players at the top end of the pitch, and you can't play them all.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Right, move on. Right, I'll leave the preview to Craig on this one, I think, because obviously the press conference was today. What did you take from what Carrick said today that you could probably put into some sort of preview for tomorrow? I mean, obviously he's waiting for Bangura. We don't know. It's most likely he's going to miss out. He alluded that there's some players that some players need to stand up now. Some players really need to stand up. He's saying it without saying it. What did you take away from what he said today that he's going to put into tomorrow?
I think that's the big thing of what you say there, and I apologise if there's a bit of background noise because I've got a hungry baby. So, but yeah,
I thought your phone had gone off there, Craig.
To be fair, that baby's noise is exactly what we're feeling anyway. So fair play to him.
Yeah, apologies. No, I think a lot with Michael Carrick. I don't think he says much that you take away. I think a lot of from press conferences, you often read between the lines rather than what he actually says to get his true feelings. I think, as it was alluded to there, I think he is, without saying it, I don't think he's ever going to be a manager who comes out and publicly lambasts these players. I think he's always going to be a kind of publicly supportive manager. Whether or not that's the case behind the scenes, I don't know. I'm sure there is times where he is a bit more, at the very least, nitpicky with them, and he is a bit more harsher in terms of saying you need to do this and you need to do that. But I don't think he's ever going to come out publicly in a press conference and say that. I definitely think that Boro need the players themselves need to step up. I think they have to be better. I am concerned about the tactics. I do think it leaves them overexposed. Against the Sheffield Wednesday side, I think they might end up getting away with it because I don't think they're, touch wood, I say this beforehand and we'll probably jinx it. But I don't think they're too much of an attacking threat where Middlesbrough might be overexposed. But watching them right now, they do just appear to me to be too expansive for the quality that they have. And it does concern me a little bit that he is very set on it.
Yeah, I find that good managers are always adaptable. Good managers find a way to do subtle tweaks to change it without changing it. If you get what I'm saying, you look at the upper ends of the game. Them sort of managers, they'll do ickle tweaks and it'll change everything, but it won't look different. And I think Carrick's trying to find that. I'm just looking at his quotes from the press conference today. Obviously, when he says, "For me, you are who you are, and you deal with things in certain ways. Some people are fiery, some people are up and down. For me, I try to be a bit more cerebral in terms of don't get too carried away when it's going well, and don't get too down about things when it's not going so well." For me, he's trying to put that message across to everyone, not just himself, to convince himself. It's just like everybody else, calm down a bit. I know it's not a great start. It hasn't been a great start. But I know experience is key, but I'm not going to throw my toys completely out the pram because it's going wrong. And I think that portrays a bit on the players as well, because you don't see the players absolutely flinging their arms out and stuff like that. When goals go in, it's always get the ball, start again. I know it'll pay off, but is it now time for them experienced players to stand up and go, hang on, you're not putting the shift in, you're not putting the shift in. Do it between themselves, don't do it publicly, but you know what I mean? Do it in that sort of way. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, we've said a few times this season that one player that you would love to see in that team because he wouldn't put up with what we're seeing is somebody like Grant Ledbetter.
Mm-hmm.
He'd have them, he'd be telling them on the pitch what to do, he'd be telling them in the dressing rooms, Howson, we've all said, leads by example. There's only really Lenihan, I think, who's a shouter in that team.
Yeah.
And for me, somebody like Grant with his character and the way he is, he wouldn't be accepting some of them performances.
No, there's no.
By the way, just to come in on that, Grant Ledbetter, obviously part of the coaching team now. He sat the row in front of me at Blackburn on Saturday, and I can assure you, he's very much still a very shouty person.
Thing is, I can very much imagine that. I mean, you've obviously seen, how 3,500-4,000 were acting behind the goal. Their frustrations. I can fully imagine that Grant was exactly the same as well. That doesn't shock me at all.
Yeah, 100%. He was. Obviously, Grant's role, he goes up there. He's often up around the press boxes or the the kind of gantries, the upper gantries, because he takes on that upper viewing role, and he has kind of constant communication with someone on the bench. Aaron Danks, I think, he's kind of in communication with through the games, and it was fair to say on Saturday that he headed in every cross that went in the box and made his frustrations clear when they didn't end up in the back of the net. It's it's fair to say that he's very much feeling it right now. It's grand.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I remember me and you spoke after the first game of the season, didn't we? When we grabbed him outside the Riverside, he wasn't too. I don't know if he wasn't too happy with the result, or too happy that two grown blokes had grabbed hold of him. But we did, because I thought we've got the guy's a legend. I know he's known for what he's done at Sunderland as well, but he led this club through some of its best moments in the last 10 years. You know what I mean? He's a legend. He's a leader, and it's something that we're absolutely lacking at the moment, which is strange to say when you look at our team, because we've got players on the pitch that are leaders. That's what they were brought in to do. Lenihan's a leader. Howson's a leader. In some aspects, Dale Fry's a leader. That's don't you roll your eyes at me. That triangle that's a leadership triangle right there. That's the middle of the pitch. And if they're not commanding you, you're struggling. I mean, you are struggling, aren't you? You know what I mean?
Maybe that's an easy tweak we can make. Why can't Grant Ledbetter be a bit more involved, be on the touchline, be in the dressing room? That's a simple tweak to make. If it was going to make a 1 or 2% difference to the players, knowing that he's on the touchline in the dressing room and they're coming at half time, maybe he's the mic go out a little bit more fired up. It's worth a try at the moment.
Just to clarify on that one, he is definitely in the dressing room at half time and whatnot. He'll from the upper gantries, he'll run down for half time and then he'll come back up. During the game, it's purely just like a different viewing platform, if you like, rather than viewing it from the touchline where they are. They have one. That's a fairly standard thing across all clubs. They'll always have one who's potentially up there, and obviously they have the analysts as well who he's speaking to, and they have the technology where they're obviously watching clips of the game back while it's happening in front of them as well. All that kind of stuff. But yeah, Grant's definitely heavily involved in that side of things. And just to touch on the leadership thing as well, though, because I think it's all well and good having those leaders on the pitch, and I definitely think Middlesbrough could do with them, stepping up a bit. I think particularly structurally when we speak about defensively, Lenihan is particularly a big talker defensively, and I think ahead of him, Johnny Howson isn't really a shouter, but you'd want him to try and organise a bit more. And obviously there is a lot of younger players and new players coming into this team who are perhaps needing to learn the more intricate details of the tactics and the way Michael Carrick wants them to play. So that is something that might come as they're still gelling and becoming a unit. But I just think in terms of the leaders, I think one thing that they ultimately can't facilitate for is the amount of missed chances which ultimately should be buried. And if Dale Fry's left with two men to mark because Middlesbrough have been kind of counted on so easily like he was for the first goal, I think no amount of leaders on the pitch can ultimately, facilitate for that. You, as Carrick mentioned today, you've got to defend as a unit, and obviously they will do a lot of work on defensive units and the structure out of possession. And sometimes all it takes is 1-2 people to not pull the weight within that structure, and it can fall down, it can leave gaps, and it can draw other people out of positions so they're not in the position that they need to be. So I think, it's not just a leadership thing. I think it's an individual kind of responsibility to make sure, particularly out of possession, that they are where they need to be and they are pulling their own weight, because if they're not, somebody else is having to cover for them.
Exactly. They've got to do it as one now. They can't do it individually. If they've got to do it as a team, the time for doing it by yourself and having them individual brilliances is gone for me. It's got to be a team thing now. But right, obviously, we've got 2 games to get a predict on. So all season we've had our charity bets going, and so far we've raised £0 and 0 pence. We were very close on Saturday. A couple of us had 2-1, just the wrong way. So we weren't far off. So we'll give it another go this week. I'll start with you, Cuts, tomorrow night.
I'm going to go for that Elaf 2-0. Dependent on if number 6 doesn't play. No, I'm only joking. That Elaf 2-0.
Okay. Diggo?
I shall go a typical old school Michael Carrick win, because I heard his press conference today and he's restored us a little bit of faith. So I'm going to get carried away like any good Middlesbrough fan should, and I'll see the Carrick scoreline of 3-1, and I'll go Marcus Force to score anytime.
Sound. Craig?
I must admit, I was fancying exactly like Dicko there with 3-1, but so it's not boring and all the same, I'll just go 1-0 Boro.
He could have went 3-1 different scorer. He fancied it.
Goal scorer, Craig?
We'll go McGree.
Ooh.
If selected.
Yeah.
Jack Love?
1-1.
Goal scorer?
I'm going to go Lenihan.
Ooh. Yeah. We'll have to move quickly on to Saturday then.
I hope you're wrong.
So I'm going to go Saturday.
I hope I'm wrong.
Force 1-0. So 2 clean sheets in 5 days. How was that for the confidence?
It's like yeah, that's done me now. Craig?
I'll go 2-1 on Saturday to Boro.
Goal scorer?
Force.
Okay. Diggo?
I think it's going to be a real tough game Saturday because of the start Southampton have had. They're going to come good eventually, but if we can win tomorrow night, we'll get a point on Saturday, 1-1, and I shall go Hayden Hackney.
Jack Will?
2-1 Southampton.
Whoa.
Sorry.
And goal scorer?
Adam Armstrong. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I was just going to say there, 8 predictions for 2 games, and no one's took us for anything less than a point.
I'm so sorry. I just can't. I can't.
It's all for charity. It's all for charity.
It's
Just wipe 2,000 off the gate instantly.
Well, it's not my money. I don't care. But right, I will leave it there then, gents. Thank you very much to you two for popping on as usual. Craig, thank you so much for coming on. Always a pleasure having you on, my mate. Keep yourself free in a couple of weeks. We'll get you on before Sunderland. I think you're probably the best person to speak to for that local derby. So
only if Sunderland win, it's a derby. Remember.
Wow, yeah. So yeah, we'll get you on in a couple of weeks, mate. All right. Thank you so much for coming on, my man. I appreciate it. And yeah, nice one. And thank you very much for listening and commenting and getting in touch. And yeah, I'll leave it to Dicko to round it out, and I'll say goodbye. Up the Boro. Be seeing you.
Up the Boro.
Toodaloo.
Up the Boro.
Thank you for listening to the 12th Man podcast. Hope to see you all again next week. Up the Boro.